Right. So for this deep dive, we're going to be looking into something
Okay.
that might make you rethink what you pack for your next trip abroad.
Hmm.
We've got excerpts from an online article about a British woman
Okay.
who was arrested in India
Oh, wow.
for carrying a GPS device.
Really?
Yeah, something a lot of hikers and travelers use
Yeah,
for safety and navigation.
for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting how
Yeah.
technology can sometimes
Right.
create unexpected challenges for travelers.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
in this case, this woman, Heather,
Uh-huh.
she's an experienced hiker,
Okay.
all set for an adventure in the Himalayas,
Right.
and she gets stopped at the airport in Delhi
Oh, no.
for having a Garmin InReach device.
No. Okay.
Now, these things are pretty popular with
Yeah.
outdoor enthusiasts, especially solo travelers.
Right.
They use satellite technology to send messages,
Yeah.
track location, and even trigger SOS alerts if you run into trouble,
Yeah.
especially when you're off the grid.
Right. With no cell service.
Yeah. So it makes sense that she would have that, especially if she's an experienced hiker.
Exactly.
But India has this law.
Okay.
It's from 1933.
Oh, wow.
It's called the Wireless Telegraphy Act.
Yeah.
And back then,
Oh.
I mean, they were mainly concerned with regulating radio communications,
Yeah.
but the law's definition of wireless telegraphy is pretty broad.
I see.
So fast forward to today, and it's being applied to modern satellite technology.
So that's where she ran into trouble.
Exactly.
A law from almost a century ago.
Yeah.
Impacting a device that's meant to keep people safe.
It is pretty ironic.
Yeah.
The article explains that under this law,
Okay.
you need a license to possess any equipment that uses wireless telegraphy.
I see.
And that includes devices like her Garmin.
Okay.
She didn't have that license,
Oh.
so she ended up being detained,
Wow.
interrogated.
That's a tough situation to be in. It is?
You'd think with so many travelers using these devices,
Yeah, you would think so.
there would be more awareness about this law.
Yeah, for sure.
The article mentions that she was eventually released,
Okay.
but still has a court appearance pending.
Oh, wow.
It sounds like a
Yeah.
pretty stressful ordeal.
Absolutely.
So to understand why this law is still in effect, we have to consider the
Yeah.
historical and political context.
Right.
The article doesn't go into a ton of detail
Uh-huh.
about the reasons behind the Wireless Telegraphy Act,
Okay.
but it's possible that it stems from
Yeah.
a desire to maintain control over communications
Right.
within the country.
It makes sense.
Yeah, remember, India gained independence not that long before this law was enacted.
Okay.
So they were likely wary of any technology
Right.
that could be used for espionage
Right. Yeah.
or unauthorized communication.
That's understandable.
That makes sense. But in today's world,
Yeah.
where GPS and satellite technology are so commonplace,
Hmm.
it seems like there's a disconnect.
Yeah, a little bit.
The article even mentions that
Yeah.
Heather posted a warning on social media
Oh, wow.
urging other travelers to leave their GPS devices
Yeah.
and satellite communicators at home
Yeah.
if they're heading to India.
That's a good idea.
Do you think the lawmakers who wrote this act could have ever envisioned how technology would evolve?
That's a great question.
It really is.
And one that highlights the complexities
Yeah.
of trying to regulate technology in a rapidly changing world.
For sure.
It's likely that the original intent of the law
Right.
is very different from how it's being applied today.
Absolutely. And the article doesn't just focus on Heather.
Okay.
It also mentions another traveler,
Okay.
Tina Lewis, a Canadian runner who was detained in Goa
Oh.
for carrying a similar device.
So it seems
Yeah.
like this isn't an isolated incident or a case of one specific type of GPS device being targeted. It seems to be a broader issue
Okay.
related to the interpretation and enforcement of this law.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a bit of a pattern here,
Yeah.
and it raises some questions about awareness and responsibility.
Yeah.
Should travelers be expected to know
Right.
about a law that's almost 100 years old?
Well, there's a legal principle that says
Okay.
ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Oh.
But in this case, it does seem like there's a gap in communication.
Yeah.
The article points out that Garmin,
Okay.
the company that makes these devices, does have a disclaimer on its website.
Okay.
It mentions potential legal restrictions in certain countries.
So the information is out there,
Right.
but maybe it's not reaching the right people.
It's possible.
The people who need it most.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder
Uh.
if companies like Garmin
Yeah.
could do more
Yeah.
to highlight these risks, maybe a more prominent warning, or even region-specific alerts
Yeah.
when you're setting up the device.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It also makes you think about the role of travel agencies, airlines,
Yeah.
even governments
Uh-huh.
in educating travelers about these sorts of things.
Absolutely.
I mean, imagine planning your dream trip,
Yeah.
maybe saving up for years,
Right.
only to end up in legal trouble
Right.
for something you thought was
Yes.
helping you stay safe.
And it's not just about avoiding legal issues.
Yeah.
It's about safety, too.
Right.
If travelers are discouraged from carrying devices,
Mhm.
that could be crucial in an emergency that could have real-world consequences.
Absolutely. The article goes into some detail
Okay.
about the experiences of both Heather and Tina.
Yeah.
It mentions that Heather was denied water
Oh, wow.
during her detention,
Really?
and Tina had to get a lawyer involved
Okay.
to help her get bail.
Hmm.
That's got to be incredibly stressful.
Yeah, especially in a foreign country.
Yeah.
It really highlights the need for more awareness
Right.
and clear communication.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue, and there's no easy answer.
Right.
On the one hand,
Okay.
countries have a right
Yeah.
to enact and enforce their own laws.
For sure.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
as technology advances and international travel becomes more common,
Right.
we need to find ways to
Yes.
ensure that travelers are informed and protected.
It's interesting because you could argue that
Yeah,
both sides have valid points.
right.
Travelers do have a responsibility to be informed,
Yeah.
but expecting everyone to comb through obscure laws from decades ago
Yeah,
seems unrealistic,
it does.
especially for something like this.
And that's why cases like these are so important to discuss.
Yeah.
They bring to light the challenges we face in a world where technology is evolving faster than the laws that govern it.
Yeah.
It's not about placing blame,
Right.
but rather about finding solutions
Okay.
that work for everyone.
Solutions that prioritize
Exactly.
both safety and respecting local laws.
Precisely. And that might involve a
Okay.
combination of things.
Mhm.
Clearer communication from governments
Okay.
and travel authorities,
Yeah.
more prominent warnings
Mhm.
from device manufacturers,
Okay.
and even perhaps a reevaluation of outdated laws
Right.
to see if they're still relevant and appropriate in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so after diving into this whole situation with GPS devices and this old law in India, what would you say is the main takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway here is the importance of research.
Right.
It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of planning a trip, you know?
Yeah.
But just taking the time to understand
Yeah.
the local laws and customs of your destination can save you a lot of trouble down the road.
For sure. And that doesn't just apply to GPS devices,
Oh,
but to anything you might be bringing with you.
yeah.
Even things that seem
Right.
perfectly harmless.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we often focus on
Mhm.
packing the right clothes and gear,
Yeah.
but we don't always think about
Right.
the legal implications
It's true.
of what we're carrying.
Yeah. And as we've seen with Heather and Tina,
Right.
even common travel items
Yeah.
can land you in unexpected situations.
Absolutely. And it's not even just about
Right.
avoiding legal issues.
Yeah.
It's about being a respectful traveler, too,
Exactly.
and demonstrating that you've,
Yeah.
taken the time
Right.
to learn about the place you're visiting.
It's like being a good guest, right?
Yeah,
You
right.
wouldn't show up at someone's house without understanding their house rules.
Exactly.
And just like with house rules, sometimes local laws
Yeah.
might seem a bit strange or outdated,
Right.
but they're there for a reason.
For sure. So, to kind of wrap things up here,
Okay.
we've uncovered some surprising legal risks associated with carrying GPS devices in India,
Right.
learned about the importance of researching local laws
Yeah.
and customs,
Mhm.
and really explored the broader challenges
So-
of navigating a world
Yeah.
where technology often
Okay.
outpaces regulations.